I started this YouTube channel with the intention of helping people. And I wanted to help people, and I wanted to do it in a way that was like this, just talking to the camera. I was inspired by other people who had similar kind of YouTube channels, just with more followers and I guess engagement. And I thought, well, yeah, one day I would love to do that. And when I started, it was very hard to get into because people were generally only interested in kind of tarot readings, and even more specific than that, tarot readings about twin flames. So when I really started to get going with the YouTube channel, it was about twin flames. It was about helping twin flames, coaching twin flames, and then it kind of became about helping people stop getting involved with who they thought might be their twin flame, but really just seemed to be kind of like a false twin flame. Even my most popular videos on YouTube are in some way about twin flames, right? And it was never really the point that I wanted to make with this YouTube channel, but it ultimately ended up, for the majority of it, became a focus, right? And yet now, many years later, after the initial spiritual awakening, it's got to be at least 5 or 6 years, more probably. I'm notoriously bad at time. Uh, and now I absolutely cannot stand the twin flame community. Right? And there's a reason why I decided to quit it, why I left it behind. And this video is not necessarily about the truth or the falsehoods of twin flame connections, relationships, ideas. There's certainly some of that, but it's not really the main focus of this video. So if you're someone who's watched these videos or who's watched me in general because of some connection with twin flames, then you can stick around or not really, but this is to help people who find themselves in the initial stages of this connection, whether they believe it to be true or not, and to give them some hopefully valuable advice and wisdom that I learned. And so this video really is why I quit the twin flame community, why I decided to leave. Okay. And there's three fundamental reasons why I did that. The first, and this is really the most important, is it seems to keep a lot of people stuck in bad relationships. Okay. Now, we're going to use words like good and bad, toxic, and all kinds of stuff. Now, certainly there's different levels of that, but when I say the word bad, I mean that it doesn't work. It's unhealthy. It hurts rather than helps. And you see that time and time and time and time again. There's entire documentaries about how twin flame communities have ruined people's lives. Very famously, Jeff and Sheila, how they preyed on people's insecurities by pushing a twin flame narrative. And obviously they got thousands and thousands of dollars, and people were forced into connections that they started to feel was a bit uncomfortable. And people do that. People do that all because of a label, all because of this idea, right? And there's nothing wrong with the idea in of itself. Feeling a strong connection with somebody that can't be explained logically, that there's synchronistic events that maybe push you or pull you apart or together, that there's certainly some differences, a strong kind of connection. And it might seem, especially for somebody going through it for the first time, like nothing has ever existed before that, right? And I remember meeting the person when I was younger that I thought was my twin flame. And it turns out she was just a woman who was there to progress my spiritual awakening, to get me to do new things, to get me off this path that I was on and to go do a new thing. And as soon as I realized that I could go do that new thing and I started to do it, she was immediately taken from my life, and I have never talked to her or spoken to her since. She's married and has 3, 4 kids. Okay. Then there was another woman who closely resembled something that would be like a twin flame, like the unconditional loving part, not the toxicity, not uh, the anger, the pain, the suffering, all that kind of stuff. There were still lots of elements within the connections of twin flames, right? We talk about separations, we talk about all kinds of stuff like that, right? There's lots of things that people claim within a twin flame relationship and what makes it a twin flame relationship, right? And that's a different point for later. And even that relationship didn't work out because of fundamental differences, right? I wasn't happy. And you can't force yourself to be with somebody if you're not happy. And it all really just comes down to this idea that the twin flame dynamic, it forces people into connections that are otherwise not healthy or bad or shouldn't last forever. And we get swept up because there's this idea romantically of love, of your other half being somewhere out there. And it might be a nice idea, and it might be something that you think is original, right? That because you're spiritually awakened, or you have some spiritual beliefs, that you've discovered some new idea, and it resonates so deeply. But it only resonates deeply because it's what you want, and it's what you crave in a sense. But truthfully, the idea of twin flames is stolen from the myths that Socrates created. You know, this idea that Zeus got angry with humans, and as punishment split them into two, man and woman, so that they had to go spend their whole life finding their other half, right? And then Hollywood movies, TV shows, romantic love, right? And then, of course, new age spirituality, hippie stuff, 60s, 1970s. You can actually point to history and see where these elements come from. You can. It's the benefit of history if you can actually research and see where things start and where ideas come from. But everybody was happy, including myself, to believe that this was some new amazing concept, and it was really only for people that were spiritually awakened, because that's how it's been marketed. It's been marketed to those people that are going through some spiritual journey, and this is how they awaken, and this is how they find themselves, right? And they do, apparently. But yet, what you see time and time again is people in bad relationships telling other people how to act. You never see anybody together. You hear these stories, and not even just stories from people that I don't know very well, YouTubers or strangers on the internet, but real life people who will spend years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, I know, believing that this one particular man is their twin flame. And no matter how many times they'll say, well, yeah, this time though it's different, it always ends up being the same, right? Oh, no, he's moving in finally. He got all of his stuff in, he put some stuff in here and he's been over. And then, next thing you check in with this woman and she says, no, well, he hasn't felt ready yet and he can't, so. And I think, Jesus, a year ago you said he was ready to move in and now he's still not moving in. What's happening? People end up stuck in dynamics that they can't get out of. They can't remove themselves from it, because the idea of being wrong is too much. It is. It's too much for a lot of people about different things. It just depends on what you're willing to be wrong about. Just probably things in my life that I don't want to be wrong about. But when it came to twin flames and accepting that these people, they were not my twin flame. It was a concept. It was something that I enjoyed, that helped for a while until it didn't, and then it caused a lot of pain. And it didn't just cause pain because of this idea of staying with people that didn't resonate, which is what a lot of people do anyway, regardless of labels and connections. But it also caused pain because of the second point that I have here, information overload. Okay, there's so much information about twin flames, and none of it can be verified or proven or even agreed upon. And yet people will base entire life decisions on this information. They will move across the country, they'll move to a different city, they'll follow their twin flame, they will not move on, they'll refuse to date other people, they will stay stuck in a dynamic of their own making simply because of the information that they found that they want. Okay? And there's lots of examples of this. So many. Right off the bat, right off the top of my head, I have seen at least half a dozen times people channeling angels and spirit guides who have information about twin flames. And hilariously, someone will channel like Archangel Michael, and it's all Archangel Michael's thoughts or whatever on twin flames. And then, people read that and they go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. That's how it should be. Yes, of course, that resonates. I'm with that. And then someone else, completely separate, will write another article or whatever, YouTube video, it doesn't matter what it is, what form of media, about Archangel Michael channeling information, again, his thoughts about twin flames, and totally different information. Totally different. Says totally different stuff. And to me, that shit is hilarious, because it's insane. It's insane that people are eating it up because they don't think, and I didn't think, and nobody wants to think. Nobody wants to critically think about where this information is coming from, what it might mean, and why it's all so different, right? You're telling me that Archangel Michael is channeling, Kathy from Florida and saying one thing, but, Herbert from the UK, totally different information. Is British Archangel Michael different than American Archangel Michael? What's happening? You know what I mean? Where are people getting their information from? And are any of us allowed to admit that it's being influenced by our own egos, right? Because I'm not here to tell you whether angels are real or not, or spirit guides, and certainly, there's elements to things that are always going to be true. But to base entire life decisions off of differing information from unverifiable people and sources, it's foolhardy because you wouldn't do it with pretty much anything else, right? Some guy emails you about a prince in Nigeria, you don't automatically send him $1,000. You kind of go, that's bullshit. But when it comes to our own love and spirituality and things that we deeply, deeply care about, we end up just ignoring all the red flags. And it's no wonder that the people who find themselves in twin flame relationships seem to have an interesting relationship with the concept of love itself, right? People who over fetishize love or romanticize it and turn it into a fantastical thing. People who really genuinely want love out of their life, romantic love is important to them. It doesn't have to be bad, it could be good. It's all just what it is. People who really care about love tend to find themselves in these situations. And I feel that these situations tend to hammer in a point until we can finally take care of ourselves, right? And with all these different information, it's hard to say what you should believe in. There's people out there that'll tell you twin flames are real. There's people out there that'll tell you they're not real. There's people out there that will say that there's false twin flames. People that will say there's no such thing as a false twin flame. People that will say that twin flame relationships are real, but you're not supposed to be with them. Others who will say, well, twin flame relationships are real, but you're definitely supposed to be with them. And other people who say that it's real twin flame relationship should have these conditions. And other people will say, no, it shouldn't have those conditions. It shouldn't be toxic at all. It should be loving and caring. And then the other people will say, no, that's a soulmate relationship. And then there's some other asshole saying to you, oh, none of that shit's real. Don't even worry about it. And then there's someone else saying, violet rays and God knows what other colors and nonsense people are coming up with. And there's too much information. There's too many differing opinions. There's too many people saying that they know what they're talking about. And I might seem like another guy who's just saying what he thinks that he knows that he's talking about. But that's not even really the point. The point is to tell everybody in a grounded way, don't you see what's happening? Don't you see that people are making money off of this? People are confused. People are getting hurt. People are staying in toxic relationships with abusers, serial cheaters, people who take drugs, people who aren't sure about themselves. There are people, plenty and plenty of people on the planet, and yet everybody will become hyper-focused on one person because of my third point, the label. People tend to think that the label helps. It does not help. It doesn't help. I mean, even in a regular, normal way that we think about labels, penguins, okay, otters, sea lions, seals, who gives a shit? Do you think seals and sea lions care what you call them? No, they're just animals, right? Labels help us categorize things so that we can shuffle them and put them and organize and do things like this. And we can see it all like on a giant spreadsheet and we can go, oh yeah, that's where it should be. And that makes sense. And I like that. And let's keep it like that. And there we go. People like that stuff. We're meant to like that stuff. We're kind of good at it. It's kind of how evolution works too. Our brains have become good at recognizing patterns. That's what they do. So that's what we do. We recognize patterns, and we recognize the same patterns in spirituality. Just because you change the language doesn't change the way that the human brain works. That's the thing about it. Spirituality is to get us in connection with our deepest self. It's not to erase humanity. Humanity is very much a part of this. So the label, what people might think helps them understand, it becomes very quickly a prison. And it became a prison for me. Again, everybody's going to be different, but for me, initially, yes, it helped to have this information, and then it just became like I was a slave to it. Like I had to do this thing, and I had to force myself into this box because it's my twin flame. Of course, I should be like this. And if you remove the label, right, even just remove the idea of a soulmate or a twin flame, and when you actually start talking to yourself like, well, I have to do this because of an obligation, that concept exists already in many people's DNA and our emotional bonds, our trauma bonds, and the way that we handle relationships with our family, like how we were brought up, our upbringing, right? People do this all the time, and it forces us to get stuck. We get stuck and trapped in terrible, terrible situations. So yeah, you might think that the label's helping you ultimately because you've learned something new and you've opened yourself up to something, but it's very quickly going to become a prison. It's going to trap you because a label forces obligation. It constrains, it puts you in a box. And the idea of spirituality, the idea of even love is to be unconditional and free. It's supposed to be open, giant field, right? Just a big open giant space where you don't need to contain it. And the moment that you try to contain it, it limits it and it controls it. You try to control it. And that's what a label is. It's a control mechanism, right? There's a woman in my life currently who I will never label. Never, 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 never. Because what I feel for her is unique in the sense that it's open and I want to keep it open. And every time I even try to label it a little bit or think about it and try to control it in such a way, it doesn't work. And so just letting it be what it is without trying to put it into something means that me and this woman can have an existing connection, right? And that's important. I'd rather have that connection with this woman than to label her and put her in a box, because putting her in a box scares her, scares me, forces an obligation. It makes things seem different, right? And you don't need that. In order to feel love, to be loved, to love unconditionally, in order to appreciate someone or something, you don't need to put it inside of a box, right? You don't need that. I mean, case in point, I've been closer to people that I would consider a mother or father figure than my actual parents. And there's no label for those people, right? How do you introduce them to others? This is my, adoptive family or something, spiritually, this is my spiritual family. No, you just keep them as they are. You don't need to explain it, right? And certain connections you shouldn't have to explain. And you shouldn't have to explain or justify a twin flame relationship to yourself, to anybody even in the spiritual community. There shouldn't be a reason to fight. And yet the twin flame community is rife with people fighting, infighting, getting mad at themselves, shame, guilt, money making schemes, self proclaimed gurus and coaches. All of this exists. And from the outside, when you actually look in and someone who has been into it, okay, I was into it. All right. The evidence is the fucking YouTube channel. I was into it and I got out of it. So you can't tell me that I don't have any wisdom or that I don't bring anything to it, because what I've seen is that it's just horrid. It's not a healthy community by any standard. It really genuinely is not, because what you end up seeing is a lot of toxicity, more than you see love and kindness and care. You don't. People get obsessed with the label. They get obsessed with this idea of true love. They get obsessed that this person is meant for them just because they caused the change and they have to be, that has to be for me. And they ignore all the red flags. They don't take care of themselves and they don't focus on the main point of the spirituality, the spiritual awakening, which was to understand yourself. And sometimes a shitty connection, a bad connection, a lesson, a short-term connection, whatever it might be, it's there to teach us about ourselves. But the more that we cling to it, we can't really integrate or learn the lessons properly. So these things, this toxicity about the community, it's why I left it. I couldn't be involved with the same kind of friends who were feeling this, talking about this all the time. I couldn't engage with the same audience. And then when I stopped talking about twin flames as much, my engagement on YouTube was like this, absolutely like that. And can I ever get it back? I don't know. Does it matter? Probably not, because if I could spend the rest of my life keeping people out of what is essentially a cult, I absolutely will, right? And I don't want anybody to not believe in somebody. That's different, right? Believing in somebody, having a connection with somebody is different, but you just treat it with a grounded reality. Treating something as a base label and pouring all of your energy and sometimes money into the connection, your time and all that stuff, it's not healthy. And we should learn to get away from it without feeling bad. Because if you can't exist without a label, then can it really stand on its own? And that's the beautiful thing about it. If you put a label on a connection and it can only exist with the label, then it's not real. But even if someone really is truly deep down your absolute twin flame or soulmate, if you can take away the label and they can still exist in your life in an unconditional, healthy way, then it didn't matter anyway. Didn't matter what you called them, didn't matter what box you tried to put them in. You've got something. You've got a real connection. But people aren't willing to do that. People don't want to have that reflection, because more often than not, it's going to reveal to them that actually, without the label, this connection doesn't stand up. And it just turns out I'm unhappy.